I come from a conservative Christian family. All my family members were / are involved in the church and have church-based jobs. When they met my wife, they loved her and embraced her as their own. We dated for 2 years and discovered she was pregnant after we got engaged. Invitations were already given at the time, and we decided to still have the wedding on date when my wife was 5 months in. My family were furious when they found out my wife was pregnant. They asked if we even still considered having a wedding. I said why not, but they were very upset, especially Mom and Dad, who said they've always been known for their decency and good Christian values, and weren't willing to let this stain their reputation. As in my wife and I getting married while pregnant. They officially dropped out and refused to negotiate, saying it was done and I have only myself to blame for this outcome, and should move the wedding out of town. I was hurt. I tried to change their minds and checked with other members, but my brother said he had no intentions to look like a joke in front of his fellow church members and dropped out. My aunt pretended to be sick and said she may not be able to make it. She's 100% healthy. My cousin said he had business trip and stopped his wife and kids from attending, and my uncle cussed me out, torn the invitation, and kicked me out. I felt terrible with no family members of my own to support me and share my joy at my wedding. I even broke down crying after the ceremony. I haven't spoken to them for months and then got busy with my 4-week-old daughter. My cousin reached out to hand me gifts and well wishes for the birth of my daughter sent from my family. I returned everything. He sat with me on behalf of the family, saying I shouldn't have returned gifts that were from my family who want to see and hopefully be involved in my daughter's life. He said Mom's longing to meet her grandbaby and everyone else is wanting to visit soon to celebrate my daughter's life. I asked him this question. I said, wasn't my daughter the reason why the entire lot of them abandoned my wedding? He just stared grudgingly as I went on about how they treated my daughter as something to be ashamed of and hide. My daughter at some point will ask about the wedding, and I have no intentions on lying to her. He replied saying he guaranteed I got it all wrong, and no matter what goes down between us, I can never deny that my daughter is their granddaughter, / niece / etc., and they're her family. He asked that I arrange for them to visit, but I refused. He kept pressing the idea, but I shut him down. My wife says I should let them come, but I still refused. I'm 23. I've known I was adopted all along. For whatever reason, I became obsessed with learning more about my birth parents at age 13. I was told all my life that my parents met both of my birth parents before I was officially adopted. My mom was white from South America and my dad was white from Italy. They specified these 2 locations to explain why I had tan skin. As I was growing up, certain things about my physical makeup made me more curious about my birth parents. My hair was kept short as a kid, but as a teen I wanted to experiment. I grew it out and it grew out curly. Big curls, but still curly. This upset my parents, so they asked that I not grow it out. When I moved away for college, I began to let it grow again. I met my girlfriend in school. She is Black American, so she also helped me care for it. She once braided my hair before I FaceTimed my parents, who lost it on me for wearing it that way. Throughout my time in school, I still searched for my birth mom, but would always come up empty. My girlfriend hinted that there must have been a mistake with the information, even down to the name my parents claimed I had before they adopted me. She gifted me a DNA kit on my birthday that I didn't get around to until the lockdown hit. I didn't think anything would come of it because my parents weren't American, so I didn't know if it would work that way. So I sent it out of boredom and got my results weeks later, which have changed everything. I'm Black and Middle Eastern. I have light skin and my curl pattern is so loose that I hadn't considered it a sign before. I have ancestral ties to Iran, which can explain a more European facial structure. I'm sorry for my wording, I'm still learning. I sent my GF a screenshot and she called me right away. We were both stunned, though she long suspected. I tried to believe that my parents were innocently misinformed, but my girlfriend kept pointing out the inconsistencies. My parents claimed to have met my birth parents, therefore they couldn't have mistaken them for white. I confronted my parents, who became enraged at me for doing a DNA kit. I was very angry, yelling, swearing. They robbed me of my identity and hindered my search with their lies. My mom told me through tears that my racial background comes with a stigma that I passed, so she wanted me to have an easier life fitting in. My dad yelled at me that I had to abandon what I just learned. I rage broke my phone and left. My siblings have been hitting me up on social media reprimanding me for being upset because our parents' reasoning is sound. I do pass, I did have an easy life. I'm not asking to be part of a struggle all of a sudden. I just don't think I should have been lied to, and I think their reasoning is bullshit and racist. I'm just supposed to act like 10 years of me searching with the wrong info isn't that big of a deal? My parents admit that my mom was black. My oldest sister also recalls seeing my mom at some point. Both verify that she was black. Yes, they could be lying again. I have plans to continue to look into my background. My girlfriend was very hurt by their statements, so I chose to keep us both away from them. I don't understand how. I'm angry about being lied to and how that lie has made my effort into finding my birth parents completely void, while also rewriting my heritage. That's my girlfriend's stance as well. I'm tan enough that going to an all-white school still got me called slurs. Whatever issues my parents were trying to shield me from, it didn't work. Maybe this is a lie that I bought into alone. 2 of my siblings are trying to be supportive. I deactivated my Facebook and unfollowed some people on Instagram. I can't entertain the argument that I should forgive my parents and move on. I'm not there yet. I get that it makes me ungrateful for feeling this way. I don't hate them, I'm just really upset and disappointed in their decisions. So I am 22 years old. I don't have much knowledge about finances and stuff as I still live at home as I'm at university. I do, however, pay my parents about £300 a month rent. I pay my own phone plan, buy material stuff I want or need, pay out for other services like for music or whatever, and try to put as much as I can in savings whilst still keeping enough in my main account for day-to-day purchases. Currently, I am saving up for driving lessons and hope that if I pass decently, I can use some of my savings towards getting a car. I'm in my final year of uni, so I'll be done and able to work full-time when all this happens. I also decided to get a credit card so I can learn how to manage credit wisely and build some up. My credit score is good for someone of my age and circumstance, but obviously it's nothing great in comparison for other stuff. I should point out that at most I only plan on using this card with a total adding up to £100. I've stuck to that so far and only actually used it twice, with these purchases only adding up to £80, and I paid it off quickly. I do not plan on exceeding my limit anytime soon, as I've heard far too many horror stories of people just using their credit card too much cause it was handy and getting into debt. The only people I disclosed this to was my dad, as my mom has the tendency to blab to my brother and sister-in-law, both 28. She happened to overhear us talking one day, and before I knew it, my brother and sister-in-law got wind and asked me if they could use it. They both admitted they had debt spurred on by excessive credit card use and thought that since I basically had nothing owed on mine, it was free money. I told them quite politely that I was really uncomfortable with that idea and that I would owe the money, and I can't magic up that kind of money. Things went quiet until a few days later they both turned up at the house. They were nice to start with, but basically started demanding I let them use the card, and they tried to manipulate my mother into guilting me into doing it. I got really angry, and when my brother said I owe it to them because they used to babysit me up until a couple of years ago, I laughed in their faces and walked out. When I came home, I learned they tried to manipulate my dad and he kicked them both out. My mother then tried and he told her to go too, and she is currently staying with my brother and Asael. The only person on my side is my dad, who tells me they're all trying to take me for a ride and they're trying to manipulate me cause I'm young and they think I'm vulnerable. My brother, sister-in-law, and mom on the other hand think it isn't a big deal letting someone else use my card. It's really messing with my head, and I just want everyone to stop being in an argument. My husband Tim has a serious dairy allergy. I'm talking about an actual immune system reaction, not intolerance. His allergy is serious enough to cause acute enterocolitis, but he hasn't needed an EpiPen since he was a kid. I work full-time and also have some seasonal work this holiday season because Tim has been without work, and money has been very tight. As a result, I barely get to rest. The holidays are especially hard, and I found myself getting just one day off every 2 weeks for almost 2 months straight. As you can imagine, that day off means the universe to me. Now, Tim loves dairy, and will sometimes intentionally eat things which trigger his allergy. Lately, it's gotten out of hand, with him going from one risky meal every 4 to 6 months to every 2 or so weeks. In fact, it always seemed to coincidentally line up with my time off, and I found myself spending my one day taking care of him. Last week, I finally asked him if he was intentionally timing it to line up with my day off. I fully expected him to say no, but he admitted that he was doing it to make sure that he'd have a nurse. And so he'd have someone close by in case he had an especially adverse reaction and needed a hospital. I was livid and told him that he was selfish, robbing me of my rest. I said that if he made himself sick again, I wouldn't take care of him. I'm exhausted and I need to decompress. He didn't say much, so I thought he'd heard me. Fast forward to Friday night. I get home from work, and a few minutes in, Tim gets a pizza delivered. I ask him why, when I'm making dinner, and he shrugs. I ask if a large garlic Alfredo pizza is worth the pain, and remind him that I won't be giving up my rest day again. He smirks and eats an entire slice while grinning at me. I left it at that and went back to my dinner. Predictably, he got sick, profusely vomiting, retching and groaning from the intense cramping and diarrhea. I slept in the guest room to get away from the sound and smell. He called for me several times and I repeatedly told him no. Hours later, he was still sick and woke me up at the crack of dawn to go get him Pedialyte and meds because he was very dehydrated and still in pain. I told him to order it in and asked him to get out and let me sleep. He was still whimpering when I eventually got up to shower and eat. Again, I did nothing to help or comfort him. By evening, he was sulking, and by morning when I had to work, he was enraged. He yelled, and by the end of the day he told our friends and family that he nearly died and I neglected him. His family accused me of passively trying to kill him. His mom called, shouting that he could have had a life-threatening reaction due to my petty actions, and that I'm a shit wife for not minding his health. I'm starting to feel guilty because she's right and he could have been seriously hurt.